Right, so today it's time to get the rear beam off and get them new Black Series poly bushes on the rear. We've already got a rear anti-roll bar on the rear of this. I'm going to check what rear beam it's got because there's loads of different rear beams, and I'm not sure if the SRI Turbo comes with a stiffer GSI version rear beam. So going to get that off now. You can see I've already got rid of the wheel well out of the bottom of this and put in a flat plate of aluminium. Just makes it a lot easier to work under here. So we're going to just undo the handbrake cable now. We can just drop the shocks down, the whole lot comes down together. You can see in the back of this I've got the preferred setup of the gas springs with the gas shocks. Now these shocks I really like them. Obviously they're starting to corrode a little bit. They're going to get sent off to be refurbished because the adjuster on them now has started to play up and it doesn't adjust like I want it to. But the cylinders themselves are a lot bigger than the coilovers. I'm not going to continue to run coilovers. I'm going to put these shocks back on when they're all refurbished. So first off, getting this white line anti-roll bar off. See how nice and thick these are. I love the 24mm rears with the 23mm fronts. They're going to go on really well. Poly bush, just going to give it a quick clean up. The powder coat on these ain't never the best. They always, when they get stone chips and that, they always start to bubble a little bit, but that can easily come off and get powder coated in the future. Right, so if you never took one of these rear beams off yourself, so this is what you've got to have to do. So these are the bolts you've got under. So you've got the brake lines and the ABS lines here. Make sure you take them off because you try removing the rear beam and they're still on. They're going to snap, especially when they're corroded. So up here, there's one bolt that goes through the mounting point to the body. You could either undo that bolt, slide that beam out, or let's try and get under there. There's these 3 bolts that go round there to the plate, to the body. You can just take them off in one section together. So I normally deattach the line up here. You're gonna have to re-bleed it again. So you just crack this one off. This is an 11mm, and then you'll see in a sec, this comes off. It's got like a spring clamp over it. You can just deattach it there. Then these will just all pull off. Just remember to do them before. Then basically it's just a case of undoing the shock. The whole lot will drop down. So you can see it disconnects like that. When you put these back in, always make sure you put these spring clamps. You can check them for damage if they're snapped, and you can buy new ones. They're like literally £2 a piece or £1 a piece. Just let it hang off its shocks. Get yourself a jack underneath. Just support the beam. Let it hang off the shocks, and that way you can just do a shock at a time and lower it down gently with the jack so it don't drop the extra 2 foot onto your head. Right, so rear beam is off. So I'm going to just find the marks now on the beam and see if it's the same as the GSI beam, the SRI Turbo, or if I need to put the GSI beam on because the GSI beam's stiffer. So I'm going to look for the markings and the wire brush it down. Get these shocks off because these are being sent off. I'm going to show you the comparison between these ones and the coilovers that are going on there at the minute. So rear beam. Notoriously, these bushes are difficult to get out. This is a GSI beam that's been sitting around for a while. So that's even going to be even harder. You can see it's all corroded, everything down there. So main thing, first thing to do, get this cap off. Yeah, there we go. So pop that cap off. You can see the whole bush then. Then get a chisel and then split this bush around here. Oh, it's not a bush, it's like a plastic spacer. That's not needed. Smash that and it will expose the bush. There you go, so you can see that splitting there. Let's just peel that. Peely peely like the McDonald's. So that's just a spacer. You see how corroded it is, that's why it's a bit more difficult to come out. You can see it's all doing this. So that's the spacer that spaces the bush in a correct place away from the beam. And on the Powerflex, or the Powerflex ones, they've got a thick lump of Powerflex there, so you don't even need the spacer in it. So now you want to fold this lip. It's not necessarily needed, but it just makes it a lot easier. You can see like the amount of corrosion and everything. You just want to break away that corrosion around here. So tap away that lip so you flatten it off because the bush is going to go outwards, downwards basically. So flatten off that lip and get yourself a load of lube. I use this stuff on the scaffolding fittings because it's one of the best. It's almost like a extreme version of WD-40, and just literally just lube the whole lot up. Let it soak in for a while, and then do the same on the other side. And I'll show you the backstreet garage version of how to get these out without a tool. It takes 2 seconds. Bit of box section and a bolt. So here's a little contraption. No, it looks like Frankenstein, but this is the way to do it. But really easy way. Just get yourself a bolt. Goes through the back of the bush. You can see the bush is obviously going to pop through the right hand side. Bolt, washer on the end, nut on the end, nice bit of box section, flat bar, whatever you want to do. You can see how it is. So clamp your beam in there like that, and then you're going to tighten this nut up now, and then it's going to pull the bush out that way. So I'm going to try and film it while it does it. And there you go. Just pops out. There's a lot of tension on that, but that is the job. That's how you do it. There's plenty of other ways to do it. So as you just see in that clip, bushes are all out now. It's time to get this beam into some sort of decent condition to put it back on. Just went over it quickly with a wire wheel. I'm going to do it with a knot wheel, get rid of all this flaky rust. Can't be putting it back on like that. So I'm going to paint it satin black, just like the front subframe was. The OPC models, like the GSI and the Coupe Turbo, they had a stiffer rear beam, the stiffest rear beam out of all the lot of the Astra Gs. So your 1.6, 1.8, your 2 litre, your 2.2 SRIs, they all have a 260 NMD strength rear beam. The GSI is the stiffest of the lot. So even without a rear anti-roll bar, it has a 320 NMD stiffness beam. There is hardly any markings on here that tell the difference. So make sure you get one off of a GSI that you know's not had a crash, that ain't been replaced in the past. The Astra VXR OPC Mark V has an even stiffer rear beam, but it's way too stiff for a lightweight track car. So they have a 560 Newton meter D rear beam, and you know that because it says M9K stamped around about there, whereas there's nothing, you can see there's nothing on the Astra G ones. So if you wanted a really stiff rear beam, especially if you're running a full weight Astra G, you can change to that. They also have a bigger bush on the Astra Mark Vs, and the mounting point here is slightly lower. That's about the only difference. Other than that, everything fits on from your Astra G. So if you've got a heavyweight car and you want to stiffen up the rear beam, you don't want to put an anti-roll bar on, just stick a VXR one back on. But this one is perfect set up for what I'm running now with the 320 NMD stiffness. With the rear anti-roll bars adjustable in 4 different places, and then you've got 2 different places on the top bracket, so there's 8 different selections you can use, and that's way enough for my kind of car with nothing in the back. So as I'm after a really long lasting tough protecting coating on this beam, and I'm not so much worried about the cosmetics of it, I'm not going for a show finish, I just want a lovely tough thick coating protected from the weathers. I'm going to use this truck paint that I used to use on all the chassis of all the trucks and that we used to repair. It's an RAL paint, and I'm going to do it in black and just literally brush it on. You leave it for 24 hours. You can leave it 48 hours as well. It goes like a rock hard, and then you go over it with another coat and it won't rust again unless you get like a nasty accident or something that cracks the paint. It goes lovely and hard, and it takes up all the nasty scratches and rust marks that was in there before. So I'm going to go over this beam now, finish it off. And by the way, I'm doing this, it's 2 AM. I need to get this in paint so it dries for tomorrow, so I can get the rear beam on tomorrow. And it's just what you have to do to get things done. So while you're all sleeping nicely in your bed, I'm out here painting the rear beam. So now there's a nice thick coating of paint on there. Going to let that dry now for 24 hours. It's nice to be able to just slap some paint on sometimes. Not have to go into really too much detail, blasting it and powder coating it. My powder coat takes way too long. 4 weeks it took for my subframe, and I can't wait for this beam to be done. So slap some of this on, get 2 coats of it on, and that should give it some really good protection. So the beam's got 2 thick coats of paint on there now, nice and dry. Just left it out in the sun, and it's got like rock hard now. So that's going to give it a lot of protection. Don't have to be a show finish. It's nice to be able to relax on some things and just give it protection rather than having to spent hours and hours on it. So you can see these are the stock bushes with the aluminium sleeve, and you see how nasty that was to come out. And these are a comparison between the brand new Powerflex ones, the solid ones. Now, these literally now just slide in with a bit of copper grease in there like that. Then that pin pushes into there. You can see where it grips inside. You've got this material in here, these fibres that grip onto the pin. That expands it in here as well, so holds it still, and then that acts as a spacer washer the same way. So also we have some brand new backing plates. We've got some from Vauxhall, some brand new GM ones as well, because they was crusty on the back, so I'm going to replace them as well. So I also painted up these brackets for the back of the beam, these ones that bolt to the chassis. Also for the fronts that I forgot about, I bought 4 of these, 2 for this car and 2 for the GSI. Brand new ones from GM, that's the part number for that side. So just to replace these ones, they're probably not that bad condition. I'll probably give them a blast and the paint up, but while I can get hold of these parts, I might as well. And also strip down the white line anti-roll bar, the rear one, because it was getting a couple of rust spots on it. Once they start rusting, they lose their torsional strength. So if you ever buy a white line roll bar, or even springs for your car, once they've rusted, they're a lot less strong. So don't let them rust. Get to them before they rust. There was only a few little spots. I've just keyed it up. Gonna get that painted in silver. Ain't got time to go and get it powder coated. So there's the beam all freshly done. So you can see now, Powerflex bushes in there. Put loads of copper grease in so that it's lovely and free, so I have no problems. Gonna proper stiffen up the rear end. You've got painted bolts in there as well. Refurbished the brackets, so that's looking a lot better. Loads of protection in there now. The way I'm gonna bolt it up is slide it under there, put jack under it, put them 3 bolts in either side, and then attach these shocks that were on there just temporarily till I put the coilovers on, just so I can put on the hubs. Got to strip it all off of this one. Obviously the backing plates, that's all being changed. Them discs are Brembo discs, so they weren't long put on there, so they're fine. They're the spring adjusters for the shocks on the rear for the coilovers. Pads are all new, so all I've got to do is swap that over. Really easy, just a few bolts, but obviously I'm going to give it a clean up before it goes on. So the easiest way I've found to put these beams on, especially when you do them on the floor, is just put them on a mat or something like this, and you can literally just slide them along if you do it with 2 hands. And you just slide them under the car, and then you can just lift the back of the beam up and then just mount these to the chassis. This will obviously still be hanging on the mat, and then you can get under there, pull it up like that, put the shock on, and that's all held in. Then you can start bolting things to it. So you can see here what I mean. Just slide it under the car, get your brackets up, lift the back of it up, loosely put in the rear bracket, and that way you can just lift the back up, attach the shock, attach it to it, easy peasy. So here's a quick tip for you. If you've ever got bolts that have exposed threads, you can see like the ones here, especially on the chassis parts, they get really corroded. First thing to do, don't just try undoing these like that. Get yourself a wire brush and go over the thread of the bolt so that you get all the grime and the rust off. Then obviously a lot of them are normally worse than this. These hubs haven't long been replaced. So yeah, just go over all the threads, get all the crusty rust off, then get yourself obviously some WD or whatever the lubricant you use. And then next what you want to do is you want to crack off the nut, give it a good 3 or 4, 5 turns, and then turn it backwards again. And what that does then is frees up any of the rust and crud that's on the bolt. These ones are quite clear because, as I say, they've been off, but you get a bit nasty build up of crud all around here. When you turn it back again, you can clean that off. Keep doing that until it comes out, and that way you won't strip any of the threads, damage any of the nuts, and it will all come off nice and freely. So the beam's up now, it's on its shocks, the old shocks that are on there just temporarily, so I can start cleaning stuff up. I'm going to end out the episode now, but I'm going to show you a few bits for the next episode. We obviously got all this lot. We've got inner tie rods, outer tie rods, the same stuff as was done on the red GSI. If you ain't seen it, go and look at the red GSI's progress on the last vid. Bottom ball joints for the wishbones, One of the coilovers I've built up so you can see what it looks like all built. So that's going to sit in there in replace of that shock, and there won't be no spring on the beam as well. Also, as you see, you've got the backing plates for the heat shield. I've just stripped down the rear beam, so now we can start cleaning all these bits up. Give these calipers a lick of paint, get the carriers a lick of paint. This is the old beam. And also, I've went over the rear anti-roll bar. You see it all stripped down. Now it's got all the powder coat been stripped off it. And I've went over it with an epoxy primer for a good key, good adhesion and protection of corrosion. And then I've went over it with 2 coats of 2K matte silver. And then I've put a satin coat of lacquer over the top of that. And I really like the way it's come out. Going to give it a lot of protection on the rear. So if you enjoyed the episode, smash the like button. I really appreciate it.